for the podcast.
Okay, I just started it.
All right, cool. And then we'll let Gene get pulled over because I think he's gonna ask you a question. We'll see if anybody else pops in. And then Shayna, you will have to be responsible for muting and unmuting if there's like background noise and stuff because I can't see the screen.
Gotcha.
Is there a lot of car background noise? Is that there too, or is that not so bad?
I don't hear any background noises.
Oh, you don't? That's good.
No.
I remember listening to the replay for a minute, and it sounded like there was a little bit of the car, the background noise from the car driving.
I mean, it's not like significant.
Yeah. Well, Gene, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. Did you have something that you wanted to add real quick, or?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to add real quick was I appreciated what you had to say this morning, but it synthesized down for me into no matter how important I may believe the moment to be, the outside event that I'm thinking about, it's always the same answer, and it's always, I value the practice. I know it works. Just do the practice. Just do the practice. That's what it boils down. That's what it boils down to, and I continue to lose that fact when I feel a.
Yeah, you cut out there right at the end, but I think I get where you're going with that, Gene. So,
if you lost that when I feel that.
Yeah, but I still think that's a good starting point. So, it is important to just go back to the practice. But I think one of the mistakes we could be making is the idea that going back to the practice is maybe designed to stop the thinking, or that if we have heavy cognition, that just paying attention to our points of attention is going to be enough. Because I've observed that to be demonstrably false. That if what it is that we're tripping up over has a lot of momentum, then how we approach it needs to have equal momentum, if that makes sense. And that could include verbal cognition. So that, I think that's really why the discussion about the voice of power is so important, because you do say, let's go back to the practice. But now let's really talk about what that is, because you're right. No matter what is going on, the answer is always to go back to the practice first and then operate from there. Oh, we lost Gene. I saw a little message. Oh, we have Karen here now.
Yeah, Karen just popped in while you were talking.
So Karen, what Gene mentioned is that no matter what it is that is the stimuli, or however we're responding to it, whatever it is, that the process is going to be pretty similar. So, whether it's bad news or family related bad news, or the world is responding, or the world is acting crazy, or there could be a natural disaster that we have to adapt to. There could be a collapse of the stock market and we lose our 401k that we have to adapt to. I could get to work and there could be some bullshit where a customer complained and said that I was rude, and I can't control other people. This is just something I'm going to have to adapt to. So the answer is, of course, that we go back to the practice. But I want to emphasize today, and I kind of emphasized it in the group study as well, that the voice of power is a part of this practice. And we can sort of condition the voice of power by reminding ourselves the principle, reminding ourselves to point back to the second ring of power, and at times just reminding ourselves of the dynamics of the functionality behind the practice, why it works, why am I going back to the practice. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, Shana and Karen?
Yep, it makes sense, because we all can see what happened. Like, there's lots of videos of what happened, and we can see the imbalance in what happened. But the unproductive thoughts behind why, or who, how, trying to figure out why it happened is not helping us. And that's where we go back to the practice of, going back to what we know in the moment, in our current moment.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Like, there's nothing we won't know what led up to. We were not in there. We were not inside everyone's head. Like, we'll never know the information. So to stew over it is just unproductive. You just have to go back to the practice, because you're never going to come to a solution in your own mind. It's just not going to happen. And a peaceful solution, that's for sure. So I don't know. I just, being completely on one side, completely on the other, neither one has all the information, or you have to get inside everybody's head and know exactly where that came from. And we don't know that. So
yeah, that's
back
true.
to the practice. Back to the practice. That's all we can do. Because,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, Karen.
This is moving us forward. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Shana.
I was just saying, back to the practice, we're moving forward. We're focusing on our current moment and where we go from there, not reaching into the back, the past of what happened, and trying to figure out all the information of what happened and comparing stories and trying to convince others of our own stories. The practice is where we need to focus on to move forward.
What is our commonality? Where do we can come together in some way, in some base, even if there's only one thing we have in common. That's what you start to work on with your practice. We want peace. We want individual freedom. I don't know, like how
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And the thing that we have most in common is our attention. Attention itself is the commonality that we all share most intimately. Now, what I'm saying specifically today, though, is, so we say back to the practice, but I would really like to point out that back to the practice can include, and probably should include, given the degree of the stimuli, it should include cognition, verbal, functional cognition, where what we're talking about today, we could be talking about in our own mind, in a manner of speaking. So by reinforcing principles, so for example, shit's hitting the fan, I'm listening to the news, I feel myself going towards it, and then I'm like, well, wait a second. No, I need to go back to my practice, and I need to pay attention to the moment. I need to pay attention to my body, my breath, the Dantian. And why do I want to do that? So I can put myself in a position to be more functional, to put myself in a position for the cognition to be more beneficial to the overall situation. And then Jean or Shana, if you can just get the background noise. Does that make sense? So
Yep,
definitely everything.
is.
Right. So everything that we've been mentioning, go back to the practice, but let's be specific. If we need to go back to the practice, that very likely means that we need to interject the cognition, the verbal telling ourselves true things. I want peace. I want balance. And I need to focus on the third ring or the second ring of power for that to happen. So when we do that, it creates space in the repetitive, habitual nature of attempting to control. So we do manage to create a little bit of space when we're doing our practice. And right now I'm talking about going back And it can sound like a mantra, but then also sometimes it just sounds like you're teaching yourself, like you're holding your own private study in your mind, where you're reinforcing this practice, where you're reinforcing the principles. And what could happen is you could catch a bit of creativity. You could catch a little bit of inner guru, where a voice will come through and it will say something that you've never heard before. It will be new words in a new order. And it may be a little bit of aha or oh shit or something like that. We can't put ourselves in that position if we're just entertaining that repetitive, habitual cognition that just doesn't really lead to anything new. So we say, where does this come from? You know, why is this happening? We have all these questions. I know why it's happening. I know exactly why it's happening. It's because of the atrophy of awareness. It's because the human mind in general is not connected to the present moment. So there is no vibrancy. The mind is getting bored. It's creating problems. It's trying to control. It's comparing and contrasting. It's entertaining the vanity of false distinction. It's getting stuck in feedback loops of more, me, I. And we see that. So the answer of why is this happening is the exact same as all of the other issues that are occurring. Unconsciousness. Unconsciousness leads to the imbalance, and sustaining the imbalance is where the attachment comes from. And that attachment is where all of that suffering and the physical and psychological suffering are emanating from. That's the source. It's the same source. That's why it's the same solution. So no matter what it is, whether it's people rioting or whether it's people, you know, taking advantage of other people with corporate takeovers and just the weird ways that people find to take advantage and mistreat one another, it all has the same source. Pollution has the same source. Mistreating of other people, racism, has the same source. Violence, wanting to hurt other people, wanting to take advantage of other people, all of these insanities all have the exact same source. It is a mind that is not connecting to the world around. So it is a mind that is only basically paying attention to that little thought bubble inside of the skull, rather than the bubble of perception being something that is expanding. It's something that's contracting and going inward into an imaginary form of cognition, an imaginary construct. And I'll say, and I'll agree with Gene, it's still important. You know, the world that we live in, that's important. Our democracy, to a certain extent, of course, that is important. Without it, we could be in complete anarchy, because the vast majority of human minds are using force. It's trying to control. They're trying to manipulate. They're trying to basically act out all of the suffering that is a result of existing and perpetuating an extreme. And that's where all of the attachment is coming from. It's from existing in that extreme. So if I know that is the source of all the problems, then I also know the source to all the solutions. And that is to relax the mind, to connect to the present moment, to feel the vibrancy of our life experience happening now. And it's ultimately to go with the present moment and adapt to it. So go with the present moment doesn't mean sink in the mud, but it also doesn't mean flail about and basically increase the rate that you sink in the sand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. For me.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Makes sense for me too.
And so what we've, yes, Gene, go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes until we get to that place where we can we all shine our lights brightly, and we're moving towards this enlightened society, there are temporary solutions to problems.
For sure.
And democracy is one of those temporary solutions, where we have laws, because not everybody is doing, not everybody is shining the light brightly. There are bullies. There are people who take advantage. There are polluters. There are people like that they don't see. I prefer people who see. So we need temporary condition until we get to the place where we're at the top of the mountain and we're enlightened. Until we get to that place, we need some order. We need somebody needs to lead and advise people a direction to follow. And that's why we make laws, because not everybody has the best interests of the universe at heart. Mm-hmm. Some people are short-sighted, or excuse me, they're not enlightened yet. They're not conscious yet. And so apparently I think that's where I get stuck. And so my problem then is I need what works better for me is not projecting what I don't want, the things that I don't like, or the things that I don't want to happen. Focusing on the things that exist in the moment that have vibrancy and life to them is a better direction for my intention than directing my attention to those things that are happening that I prefer not to happen. That just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me. Focusing on the things that are happening that I prefer not happen, it just takes me in the wrong direction on that number line. It just drags me further away from peace.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, Gene. And I bet that makes sense to a lot of the folks listening. I mean, now, so what we're talking about though, specifically when we say go back to our practice, I'm emphasizing today that a part of our practice includes a mantra, and it can include what I call telling yourself true things. And, Gene, we don't have to get into what's true for other people. We could just say what's true for us, especially with what has been proven to us through our own practice. That's most important. We have this experience and we have this information, and now we have this knowledge that we can express unto wisdom. So that's really what we're focusing on now, is expressing it unto wisdom, and we can use our cognition to do that. So one of the interesting things is that when we're looking at the problem, so the problem is a mind that is lost in attempting to control. It's lost in patterns of habit. It is lost in attempting to manipulate and attach and cling. Now, Gene's right. We have laws and things like that on a temporary basis. And I think that makes perfect sense. It is what it is for now. We're not in that society where everybody's on the same page yet. And that's cool. Or it is what it is. I don't know how cool it is. But Gene, wouldn't you agree that behavioral change on the individual level is the only thing that will ever lead to lasting, sustained change and the evolution of our species and the evolution of human consciousness, is for people on an individual level, you, me, George Clooney, Thomas, somebody else, I don't know, I almost said Thomas Jefferson, but that's a dead guy, so he doesn't count. But yeah, George Clooney, he counts. Donald Trump, he counts. The only way that we will ever have lasting change in this world and truly see an evolution of consciousness and the rising of joy and connection and caring and compassion and camaraderie, the only way we can have this happen is on an individual level and work outwardly from there. Isn't that right? We're not going to be able to have any amount of laws or government that creates that change on the individual level. Can we agree on that?
I agree.
Do others agree that behavioral change is the number one thing on an individual level for this to be sustained and perpetuated to the point where we could have this lasting, peaceful society that is growing, evolving, adapting, and who knows what we can survive and overcome at that point. Maybe our star goes supernova and we're just cool with that. You know, we've learned how to adapt this to a supernova. Who knows, right? But in order for this change to occur on a global level, it has to change on an individual level, and that change has to be desired. It has to be wanted. Does that make sense? Do we all agree on that, Karen, Lauren, Donna, Shayna?
Yep,
Yes,
I
I
agree.
agree. Yeah.
So no matter what the problem is, if we all agree on that change has to be on an individual level. Hey Gene, is your garden, is it fully tended to? Are there no weeds in your garden? Do you just have the most perfect, immaculate garden of your mind and experience that there's just nothing left for you to tend to? You can just sit back in the garden of your mind and just chill because it's perfect.
Not close enough, no.
I'm nowhere near there, Gene.
I've still got a little work to do, yeah.
Yeah, I'll admit I'm nowhere near that. I feel peace most of the time. I feel connection most of the time. There's still things that I need to adapt to. I still have long-term habits that are slowly starting to dissolve and go away. And I'm seeing myself and my ability to interact and behave more and more and more and more in real time as it's happening. And I'm still adapting. I'm still learning. I'm still open to changing with change. So no matter what it is, whether it's Donald Trump acting a fool or it's these groups and these organizations that are acting a fool, no matter what it is, the most true solution to any of it is to shine my light brightly and move forward from there. So no matter what it is, isn't the answer still just the same thing?
The long term answer, the solution that's closest to permanence and enlightenment is that way. Everything else is just short term, and
Right.
pretty much ineffective.
Pretty much ineffective. What at most happens is we get into a little bit of self hustle or societal hustle where we think that there's been magnificent change and then we're shocked when it just goes back, or we see that we're not really as far along on the evolutionary totem pole as we thought we were because we're too busy still just thinking. So you know, my real point here is, and I wish Jerry was here because it just doesn't matter what the situation is, whatever it is in the world that we need to adapt to, whether it's a change of weather or a virus or people just being genuinely or generally moody. Maybe it's a full moon and you know folks are acting how folks act when there's a full moon. No matter what it is, there's going to be something for us to adapt to. And that adaptation involves me being the change, which involves me going back to my practice. I think we can all see from this discussion that that is always square one, step one. No matter what is going on in the island of the practical, I have bills to pay. Okay, where is my mind and did I put it there? People are treating me unfairly, which has happened to me at work so far. You know, what's the most important thing? Where is my mind and did I put it there? I have to always begin from there. Do I want to have better words, more true words, more sure words, more adaptable words? Do I want to communicate in the most optimal way possible? Do I want to behave and act in a way that is in alignment with my principles and in the most energy efficient way possible? The only way I can do that and know that for sure is to go back to the basics of my practice. Where is my mind and did I put it there? So if someone cuts me off in traffic, where is my mind and did I put it there? If my animal dies of old age, where is my mind and did I put it there? If there's a tragedy in the world around me, there's a tornado and it devastates a town nearby, I want to be the change that I want to see in the world. I want to be a leader, even if that means being, you know, I don't want to say a good follower, but yeah, a good follower. Let's say we're in an emergency situation and Gene is calling the shots. We don't need two people to call the shots. Gene's already stepped up and started doing that. Maybe right now, what is most needed from me is to do my job, and that's to carry buckets to the fire and hand them to Lauren, and then Lauren hands them to Karen. Karen hands them to Donna, and then Donna throws it onto the fire while Gene comes up with all the good ideas. Hey, I don't know, the most efficient way to interact with the present moment is, where is my mind and did I put it there? Is my attention deliberate? Is my mind deliberate? Am I aware of my own cognition? Am I aware of my own action? Am I aware of my emotions as they're happening? I won't if my mind is not deliberate. If my attention is not deliberate, I am a leaf at the mercy of the wind, and the three destroyers will consume me. I will be consumed by biological habit, I will be consumed by societal habit, and I will be consumed by the habits that I've created already. And the atrophy of awareness will only grow if I'm not doing my practice. But what we're highlighting today is that a key part of the practice is to reiterate. And I think Donna would agree, this has been a part of the practice from day one, pretty much. We've had productive self-dialogue and substitute dialogue. Productive self-dialogue could look like a mantra, and it could look like telling yourself true things, things that you know to be true, even if the moment doesn't feel good right now. So Gene, let's say that your body hurts. You wake up and your body hurts. I would remind myself that I am a biological creature and my body is going to hurt sometimes. Maybe this is preventable, maybe it's not. Either way, where is my mind and did I put it there? My body's going to hurt sometimes. So I'm going to pay attention to my energy body more today. I'm going to pay attention more to the shadows today because my Dantian is killing me. I got a tummy ache. I'm going to adapt to that. I'm going to change my practice a little bit. But the bottom line is that I'm going to keep my practice. I'm going to keep my, but I'm talking to myself. I'm giving you an example. This is what I'm going to tell myself. So I'm going into the dispensary. I need to be on top of my shit. I need to watch what I say. I need to watch how I interact with people. It's the most regulated industry in the state. So I have to be really cognizant of how I'm interacting with customers. I need a lot of cognitive attention. I'm going to tell myself that. I'm going to remind myself of that. And I might even use words to do it. Do you see what I mean? It's not declaring war on thought. I might need words to do it. In fact, I'm probably going to need words the more significant the stimuli is. So when I see people
focusing,
yes,
so
Shana.
you're focusing on what you're doing, not trying to control everything outside of you.
Exactly. But that, Shana, doesn't mean I don't want things outside of me to change. I do. I want a president that cares about people and not just himself. I want a capital that is free from vandalism, that is more secure than what we saw. I want those things. So they are important to me. But if they are important to me, if I do want those things to change, I need to do my practice. I need to be there. I need to show up with the best mind possible, with the best energy possible. And if I really want the whole country to change, I have to change my own mind, my own behavior first and foremost. And so,
but in that moment, you don't even have to decide all those things. It doesn't all have to make sense and add up and be evaluated and have a plan. It's just, this is where segmenting really helps me now. From going down rabbit holes, is you said you're going into work and it requires a lot of cognitive awareness and maybe talking. So you go, this is my work segment. And so I'm in this bubble within this sphere of work segment. Here's how I'm going to line things up so that I can stay with my practice. And then when you're home, you can say, here's my watching the news bubble. And this is where I'm going to line up my practice so that, segmenting really helps me. So I'm not at work thinking about what's on the news, and I'm not watching the news and getting sucked into segmenting my day so I can keep my awareness where I've decided for it to be deliberately while practicing. Where are my feet? Where's my breath? All the things that I know work.
Yeah, that's perfect. So let's use segmenting. So we have segmenting, and then we have things that are going to occur, and that is pebbles in your pond that you didn't plan for. So I'm going to go segment my day at work, but then let's say something like 9/11 happens where it doesn't matter where you are, it's gonna interject itself into your day, into your
Right, but
segment.
because you were doing all of that, you're in a much
Right,
calmer, clearer state, and navigation is
right.
easier.
It is, or it could be. It could be easier. I don't. Um, it could be easier. Yes, there could be
Well, it's
something that
it's a
just
lower hanging fruit.
sure, and I'm good with all that. But now I want to focus on how, and it is using cognition, using words. So if I'm going to segment my way into the dispensary, that's not going to be abstract. That's not going to be quasi. Yeah, it's not going to be quasi. It's going to be what Donna just said, but I'm going to be dialoguing that to myself on the way in. I'm going to be reminding myself. So what I'm highlighting right now is using cognition to create the voice of power. Of Does that make sense? Do you see where I'm going with that? So either one is occurring. We're segmenting, which is great. That's an excellent addition and a valid practice point. Or we have the random rock thrown into our pond. Either or, we can use our own cognition, our tendency to go back to words as an advantage. We can use that deliberately and intentionally and willfully. And this is a practice
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
This
that
is
does make
something you can
sense.
do.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense, because even if you're segmenting and you're doing that, reminding yourself of true things, when that rock is thrown into the pond while you're segmenting and you're reminding yourself of true things, then you're going back to that. So the rock's been thrown in the pond, it kind of takes you off, balance a little bit. And then you go back to reminding yourself of those true things that you were before. So yeah, that makes sense
Mhm.
for your practice. Because
Right. Does that make sense, Gene?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, it happens to be the place I tend to go often anyway. So
Hmm.
since I'm gonna go, and my habit or my history is to go there, I might
Hmm.
as well have prepared words that are going to help me when I get there.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Bingo. And so we keep saying, go back to our practice, go back to our practice, but let's be specific. That can include functional dialogue. Now, what I have noticed is the more extensive the stimuli, like the more heavy the stimuli, the more that dialogue starts to sound like a mantra. Because I need it to be simple, I need it to feel true, and I need it to redirect back to my practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it has to be that way. For me, otherwise I begin to evaluate it, take it apart, look at it from
Hmm.
16 different ways, and now I'm gone. Yeah.
Right. So let's say that I'm going to segment. If I'm going to segment my way into the building, I am going to use verbal cognition to remind myself of what I'm doing. Well, I have to go into an environment where I talk a lot, like Donna said. Where is my throat chakra? Attention on my throat chakra. Uh, oh, I'm going to take my power object, and this is going to remind me of my throat chakra. And I'm talking myself through this as I walk to the building. I am present. I am aware of my power object. Maybe I have a note card. The note card is so that I can read it. And when I read it, that is a voice in my head. That's the voice again. Remember, we can only have one voice at a time. True, the voice loves to take on different personalities, but there's really only one voice. That's when we start to dissolve the multiplicity of self, is when we realize there's just one voice, even though it loves to take different personalities. I can only have one at a time. So when I'm segmenting, I'll segment that with words, the voice of power. When I am brushed up against a rock in my pond, which could be, a customer is complaining. They're upset because we don't have a product. They want to know when the next delivery is. And I'm like, sir, I'm not allowed to discuss when are, and that, that's not, and the guy's like, I know you got them back there. When are they coming out? And I'm, sir, I would love to tell you. I want there to be more of a selection as well. But unfortunately, I would be putting my job at risk, and I can't tell you that information. I can transfer you to a manager, but that's not something that I can do. So if they start to yell at me, if they start to verbally abuse me, maybe I would use the cognition. And I'm being specific. There's a voice. I'm talking to myself. This isn't my garden. Maybe this is a reflection of their mind. They're not really mad at me. This has nothing to do with you. So when that person was yelling at me in the lobby, I was telling myself, do no harm. Do no harm. Anything you say is going to make it worse. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to justify or explain. Say nothing. Now is the moment to be silent. It's not passivity. It is adaptability. Right now, saying nothing to this person who's clearly just flipped their shit and they're in some chemical imbalance, and it's not exactly how you would say
Effective communication, because they're not
well,
they're not hearing you. If you say something, you're just adding fuel to that
yeah,
fire
they're
they
in
have.
exactly, they're in a state of complete unconsciousness. So and they're feeding their emotion. They're in maybe even a state of abnormal psychology. So can I meet abnormal psychology with the voice of power? No. So I don't need to try to meet this person with the voice of power. So I told myself using words, and that's what I'm highlighting in today's podcast, using words, the voice of power. And it's a form of functional cognition to tell myself true things. This has nothing to do with me. I did it at the movie theater when the person is complaining about the movie and they're yelling at me. Don't take this personally. Just do. Smile and wave, get out of there, and you can get through this. But am I doing a good job at highlighting that I am actually using a voice in my mind, my one voice, to direct this, to say this? And just like Donna was segmenting, I love segmenting. But let's admit that some of that segmenting is going to include verbal cognition in my mind. I have to remind myself, I have to talk to myself. And like Jean said, we've been going to that habit of thinking for so long that we're going to use that momentum to our benefit. It's like if Gene is trying to punch me in the face, I'm going to use his momentum to my benefit. And that will mean he's not punching me in the face, he's just crashing into the wall. But, that's how the ball bounces. That's that's what I do with a punch to the face. I redirect it. Same thing, but I need to use my voice of power. Now, later, the more that we create space, the more the voice of power becomes straight up inner guru. When we're telling ourselves things that maybe we didn't even fully know or fully understand, or words about our practice, words about the nature of connection, these things can begin to occur, and that is inner guru. And when inner guru speaks, the energy has already occurred. So we already know, we already have that feeling. So the voice of power goes from something that we kind of groom to something that just shows up every single time we need it to tell us what's what, to just explain what is going on. Ernest, you're cherry picking right now. That's the voice of power. It's telling me that. I'm not, but let's say I was. Let's say I'm just saying, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna go ahead and do what I'm doing and not care about my principles. Hey, inner guru might occur and say, Ernest, you can do that and you will regret it. It will lead to suffering, but you can do whatever you want. That was the voice of power. That was inner guru reminding me of my practice of true things. I put true in air quotes, but I'm talking about energetic principles, things that are at least true to you. So even with Donna's segmenting, this is a part of the rule of three, using functional cognition to help create space. Eventually, the more that we get to seers training, the more we're creating space in the cognition, the more we're just connecting and we're directing our attention, the less words. but I would never say no words. I'm using words right now. And I would say that by keeping my attention on the throat chakra, by keeping attention on my proprioception, by keeping attention on how the energy is flowing while I talk, the things that I tend to talk about tend to take on more of a balanced essence, more of a firm essence, if you've noticed. So does that make sense? Does that make sense, Donna? So not taking away from segmenting and not taking away from rapid redirection and the rule of three, but it's really important that we're using our cognition to create this thing that I call the voice of power. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Does that make sense, Donna? You might not be able to talk. That's okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So are there any questions about any of this? So some of those universal truths, Gene, I would remind myself that I do want the world to be a better place. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not ignoring these facts. When it's time to vote, I'm going to vote. When it's time to pay Caesar what I owe, I'm going to pay Caesar what I owe. But at the same time, I am going to be a part of true and lasting change from the inside out. And that always means tending to the garden of my mind. That always means that where is my mind? That's always first. Where did I put it? Am I just judging? Am I comparing? Am I contrasting? Am I attempting to control? All of those things will just lead to more suffering. All right.
It's a great strategy.
Yeah, and it's actually it's always been an important part of this practice. So, we started this week and we started with the nature of attention. So, our attention has been habitually going to words, and we got a lot of energy towards words. So, let's not declare war on it. Let's not try to use the energy of denial. Let's just begin to use our thought in a more functional way. And I don't just mean positive thinking, but hey, if positive thinking is more functional than negative, then just think positive, and that's cool. But ultimately, when I say functional thinking, I don't just mean positive. I mean solution based. I mean creative. I mean maybe even thoughts that you've never thought before, that nobody has thought before potentially. No need to get into the comparing and contrasting of that, but every now and then you're going to have a thought and it's going to be like, whoa, shit, I need to write that down. Do you see what I mean? That's the voice of power, and that's okay. Well, it's okay for me. All right, any questions about any of that? Karen, Jill? Hey, Jill. I'm parked now, so I can look at the phone.
Hey there.
All that makes sense?
Yes, I love it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, good news, Jill, is the podcast and all of the video replays are just being uploaded now. So podcasts are being uploaded to Podbean, and you can get there from my website. And then it usually takes like a day or so, but all of the video replays from the study sessions are being uploaded to YouTube and the website for free now. So there's no subscription. You guys can just catch up on all the old stuff, or if you miss a study session, you can catch up on all of that for free, just whenever you want.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Otherwise, the podcast tomorrow is going to be super early because I work early. So I think, I don't know, I leave at 5:45. So I think we're looking at like a 6:15 start time tomorrow morning for the podcast, weather permitted. I'm very likely not going to do an evening podcast because I just don't think it's safe to drive at night. I'm not feeling good about that. So I'm going to listen to Inner Guru and not drive at night. When the time changes, then maybe if it's still daylight, then maybe I will. But the only reason I'm doing a podcast is because I'm on the interstate, and the interstate is dead. So it's just literally driving in a straight line.
Don't pod and drive at night.
Yeah, no, maybe not. My eyes aren't so good. If my eyes were better, then it might not be a big deal. So maybe Gene can podcast and drive at night, but not Ernest. So not now. My eyes need better night vision. But yes, I'm going to go segment a little bit because I'm going into work. So I hope you guys have a good rest of the day. Otherwise, I'll see you at 6:45 my time. Or wait, 6:45 my time. Wait, no, 5:45 my time. Yeah, 5:45 my time. Or no. Sorry, 6:15. Is that confusing enough? 6:15 a.m. I'll see you guys at 6:15.
Thanks,
All right.
Ernest.
All right. Yeah. You're welcome.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Jill. Yeah. Bye, Donna. If you guys have questions or comments, send them to me and then we can talk about them in the podcast. But anything that's on your mind, just let me know and we can talk about it.
Sounds good.
All right. See you guys. Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye, thanks.